information in the minutes of 12th May 2022. Can someone please confirm an accurate record of what it was? And sorry, Lloyd? Yep. And seconded by Nicole. Any discussion on that? No? All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. I don't know of any notification of extraordinary urgent business. Any questions? Any questions? We'll move on to chairman and councillors' reports. I haven't got anything from myself, but has anybody else got anything to report? Let's move through it. Okay.
It's an open question, you don't have to answer it now, but it'd be good to make sure that all the minutes, I think I've seen most of them come through now, all the minutes have gone back to the chairs of the liaison groups and have been ticked off so that they're up to speed when we have our chairs meeting shortly. It's just an open question, so that we need to be back in a timely manner.
I think,
just make sure that,
to my knowledge, I saw the Waihopo one go back there the other day, but
I think
are they all?
But it's just making sure.
Yeah.
We can do that.
I certainly appreciate them getting back quickly, and that was good with the team to do that.
They can do that while it's fresh in their mind, and also it's a lead into the chairs meeting that we'll have shortly.
Yeah.
No, that's all good. Right, we'll move on to item number 9. Reports, integrated catchment management report, item 1, in regards to the environmental fund update. Welcome, Ellie. How are you? When you're ready, rundown, thanks.
Afternoon, everyone. So I think Polly has met you all before and spoken before, but just to introduce Polly, she's the team lead for biodiversity. And at the last council meeting, Councillor Ludlow asked for an update on the Environmental Enhancement Fund, because this was the first year that we ran the fund with the extended budget, thanks to MFE, and without having the councillor input into the individual sign-offs. So Polly's just going to talk you through what we've managed to achieve this year with the enhancement fund. Awesome. Thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. So just to give you an update, the Environmental Enhancement Fund opened later than normal, so we opened it in November, which shortened the time frame people had to do their projects, but we were still really impressed with the fact that we got 36 applications, so the graph on the left shows you the EEF applications. We got 36 in total, and we declined 9 of those, so we had 27 projects going. And all of those projects except 2 were completed, and they were mostly impacted by the drought. It wasn't suitable to carry on with their projects, but they've been deferred to this coming year, so they will still be going ahead. The graph on the other side shows you the applicants' contributions to the projects that we supported, and then the EEF contribution. So it was approximately 295,000. Out of our 300,000 budget, so I'm pretty pleased with that given how late we started and how many applications we had. We managed to get that amount of money out into the community, and you can see that the applicants contributed almost 500,000, so well more than the 50%, and that's largely due to a few big projects going ahead. So I thought it would be of interest to you to know what sort of habitats those projects were working in. So if you can see the sort of browny kind of coloured size that looks the biggest, that's a forest habitat. But when you put all the other wedges together on the other side, it's about a 50-50 split between forest and wetlands, which we were very pleased with given the low representation of wetlands throughout the region. So supporting a good number of wetland projects and a good number of different types of wetlands as well, you can see from there. This is just a graph that shows you how we've been using the new criteria and the prioritisation that we put into place. So you can see it's gone through a process, and you can see the largest number of them in the purple image has been threatened habitats that have been being looked after. So just what that shows you. And then this is a summary of the overall work from all of the projects throughout the year. So we had 19,000 odd hectares being actively managed. So that's projects that we support. So there's some large community-based projects that cover significant areas, and so we will have supported them with a $20,000 grant, and it's contributed to their overall program. So we've included the whole figure in there because it's a little bit too hard for our applicants to break it down and go, we spent your 20 grand on exactly this thing. There was 22.36 hectares of planting undertaken, 33,000 odd plants put into the ground, 39 kilometres of fencing, 19,000 hectares of animal control, and 438 hectares of plant control. So there's a good variety of projects being done and a lot of areas being supported. We also gathered statistics on the people who are involved in the projects. So we had 86 individuals who were paid in some way through the projects that we've supported, and those people did 13,698 hours, so there's a lot of work happening. And then we also asked people to tell us about the number of volunteers they had, so you can see there's a good number of volunteers actually participating, and they also contributed a high number of hours. This came up better than I thought. So this is a graph that shows you where the applications came from, so you can see there's a good variety across the whole region. So the green ones are the ones that we approved, the red ones are the areas where they were declined, and the yellow one is one that's been deferred through the coming year. So there's a nice spread of projects happening throughout the region. And so then I thought I would just share a few of examples of sites that we've been working on. So this, the left-hand picture shows you the general location of the site. This particular one is a lesser wire Russian tangle fern site on the peat bog, so a wetland site. And these are the contractors going through looking for gorse and broom so that they can take that out because the habitat type regenerates quite delicately, so they have to be taken out by hand. And then the picture on the right, which maybe you can't see because of where the other people from our people is just someone drilling and pulling a holly tree. This one here is in the Long Ridge North area, and it's a red tussock swamp site. So yeah, another habitat type that we've been looking after. This one here is in the Waikawa River, Niagara sort of area. This is a riparian Kowhai ribbonwood forest. You can see there's a large ribbonwood in the front of the picture, the largest one, and there's a Kowhai beside it. The main activities here have been stock exclusion and assisted regeneration with some strategic planting. This is another ecosystem type, so this is a sand dune out in the Otara area. So it's a sand dune forest, and the area in the red, which is circled, had some old macrocarpus which they've taken out and then replanted with native ones to further protect and enhance the existing native vegetation area behind there. So they've been mostly doing, they already had established animal pest control and weed control in their area, so they've just used the fund to extend that bush area and replace the macrocarpus with natives. This is a large site out at Slope Point, which is a Kamahirata Remu forest of about 70 hectares, so one of the larger sites that we're supporting. And the activities they're doing out here are possum control and some Darwin's barberry control. This is an example from the Tianao area where they've been doing some small planting with beech forest, some wetland areas, some medigary, and fencing off to protect the areas from stock. And these people here have been growing and eco-sourcing all of the plants themselves in a home nursery, so they've put in thousands of plants at this location.
No road. Yeah.
And then this one is one of the Ngaitahu ecosystem restoration projects that we were able to support, and they've been doing regenerating beech forest, wetlands and waterways. This is another one of the large scale wetlands, so the top left hand picture is of the site, the bottom left hand picture is of a pig exclusion fence that they've put in up there, and then on the right you can see them doing some main plantings in the main planting area. So that just shows you a variety of the sorts of things we've been. My last slide.
Thanks for that.
Any questions I could ask?
I've got Eric, Lyndall, Lloyd. Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was interested in the 33,000 plants that you put in. I'm presuming they're natives. And if they are, where do we sort of access those? Because those of us who are wanting to do these plantings are having grave difficulties in actually accessing plant material.
Through you, Chair. Yes, they are natives and they're all eco-sourced, and the largest quantities of them have been grown by the sites themselves. So they've been grown on site at private nurseries essentially.
There we go. Thank you for that.
Lyndall?
Thanks, Chair. Just recognising that this is a new way of funding this work, so it's not an obvious question, but has it enabled better, more efficient, greater project work than the old system? Has change been a good one?
So I think in the old system we were probably doing about 5 or 6 sites a year, and so we've been able to support 27, and we've got more this year, so we've got about 30 applications or so in. So I think it has been good, and we're still working through those systems and refining our processes of being able to get applications out and decisions to people. So
Great. Nice to have a change that's made a difference.
Lloyd?
Thank you, Stephen. You've shown us what you have done for the last 12 months. Do we go back and look at work we have done some years ago? And the reason I say that is when I look around the plantings, and then illustrated with that photo, appear to me to be very, very close together compared to the mature trees where they're actually established and up and going. And I'm just wondering if are we over planting and not considering the normal habitat that these plants grow in? Because when I see them in their normal habitat, they don't seem to be that close together. So my question really is, do we go back and evaluate what we've done to actually guide us as we invest in this sort of work going forward?
And so there's 2 parts to that. The first one is, yes, we do plant very closely together, more closely than they'd be in nature. And that is to get canopy closure really quickly and to help with long-term maintenance and suppression of weeds. So we do expect that over the next 20 to 50 years, they would start dying out, and outcompeting, and natural selection would mean that the density is going to be reduced. But actually by investing in planting densely now, we do less weed control and we have better survival long term. So that's why we do that. The other question in terms of going back, we haven't had capacity to do that very much. We do try and keep in touch with our landowners over the years, but we have been quite stretched. It's something we'd like to build into future programmes, that we maintain that and keep going back and checking and helping and supporting everybody, not just a few groups.
Good. Nick or then Peters?
Yes, it's good to see this going on, and I'm assuming quite a bit of this is jobs for nature funding, so good to know how long have we got, did we fully spend the allocation? This is that presentation that one captain group the other night, and I think it was news for a lot of people that this was available on the scale of this. Have we got 2 year, 3 year, what's the time frame?
yes, we have funding up to June 2025, so at this level, and the fund will be in the 400,000 mark for the next 3 years. The last year we released the fund late and we only under allocated it by about 5,000, so we were able to get that out, which I was quite pleased with myself. So yeah, and we in the process with MFE of rolling some of that over, so we don't necessarily always lose it if we aren't able to allocate it.
Peter?
Just in your previous slide, you had the stats on the areas. I haven't got it here on the thing. Can you roll back to that? How many hectares have you established? Really, just right at the start.
So this one here,
No, next one.
That's it, is it?
Is that 22 hectares of planting?
so that's the hectares that the projects overall have put in this year. So I wouldn't say that the 300,000 that we have is a direct correlation to achieving all of those, but it has supported those projects to achieve those outcomes.
I just want to highlight that this stuff's really hard. Establishing native is really difficult. It's not easy. Some people talk about we just need to do that, we just need to do that. The reality is that it is quite difficult to establish.
And some of the groups that we are supporting have been well established and really well run and well resourced, but they still need that help. They still need that financial support to be able to keep their projects going.
So just a supplementary question, sorry. So do you think the enhancement fund, where we direct resources towards new planting or the enhancement of what Lloyd was talking about, already established stuff or regenerating, are you getting a bit of a feel, do you think, or is this too early to say where we should be directing resource for the best, to get the best bang for buck, you could say?
So we're only putting resources into stuff where there is something already existing. So while that looks like a massive new area, it is at that location, there is other surrounding indigenous vegetation to it. So we're getting the best out of that by enhancing and expanding what we've got. So we haven't invested in any brand new trying to establish forests.
Okay, so 22 hectares, that shouldn't be.
I've got a question for David, just in regards, obviously, there's close to 40 kilometres of fencing put in. Is there a lot of stuff being fenced off? Like farmers are fenced off like that, and would this fall into the SNA sort of scenarios? I'm just saying, do we know the areas that have been sort of retired?
So again, the more existing bush areas where that have been fenced off, and some wetland areas.
So yeah, I
We should be able to
mean, without doing the ecological assessments and the types of areas that we have been helping support with fencing are potentially areas that will become SNAs if the new legislation comes through. So we are looking, and Polly had the slide with the prioritisation and the types of things in there. We are looking to fence the best of the best to protect what's left first. So that's the sort of thing that we're protecting. And if we're doing that right, then yes, that should all flow on to SNAs because that's the level that we're trying to look at.
So you should be able to tell, I'm probably coming down on areas trying to work out hectares that people are retiring and things like that from a point of showing if the government's saying, hey, people are doing this. Just, kilometres of fencing says one thing, it's actually what are they actually fencing off as such. So, I mean, it's just a question we can get at some stage.
Yeah, we haven't done that analysis.
So the area behind those fences is included in the actively managed figure. And that's something that
that's what I mean.
and
You're nice to have 19,000 hectares fenced off, but it's not, it wouldn't be that though, is it?
some of it would be in there though.
Yeah, but that's what I don't know. I'll talk about it. We can look at that in the future, but it's of interest for myself. David, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've actually answered the question, the 19,783, and I was just wondering what that comprises. Yeah, what that did comprise of. So obviously a lot of that's just fenced in.
So that comprises of the actual physical location of the sites. So not all of it's being fenced, and not all of it's being planted, and not all of it has animal control happening in it.
That's good. Thank you very much for that report. It's great to see, and let's keep it going. And can I have someone to note the reports? Nicole, Lyndall, second it. All in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Moving on to the
Presentation, I think we did it on the same slideshow.
marine biosecurity. Prosecution. I should have bought popcorn. Take it away, Ellie.
Change.
Just needs to get going. Yeah, so we just thought we'd talk you through the marine prosecution because it's been ongoing for a couple of years and we have just been successful in court. So it's the first marine biosecurity prosecution that a council has ever run and the first time a pathways plan has ever been successfully prosecuted as well. So it's quite a big thing, so we just thought we'd better talk you through what it is we've done and why and what it was. So back in 2020, we got a report from a member of the public that this boat was down in Bluff and it was covered in Andaria and it was potentially heading to Fiordland. Unfortunately, by the time our officer was able to get down to inspect it and stop it, it had already left. But we did manage to catch up with it in Fiordland at its Doubtful Sound mooring. So we had a biosecurity officer and a couple of divers dived it and checked it out to check whether what was reported was actually the case. And they found that it wasn't in the condition it should have been to be in Fiordland. So the first thing that they found was it still had Andaria holdfasts on it. So these bits here are bits of Andaria where Andaria would be growing on the hull. And so they found multiple holdfasts on the hull, and they were of an age where the marine experts were able to say that that had been there longer than that boat had been in Fiordland, so it was definitely there before it entered Fiordland. So the first thing that we prosecuted them for was the RPMP. So by having a pest on their hull, they're not compliant with the regional pest management plan, having a pest, harbouring a pest. The next thing that they determined when they were under the water was that the boat was also dirty and did not comply with the Fiordland Marine Regional Pathway Management Plan. So this is where they had a dirty hull. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pest, it just has to be dirty beyond a slime layer and beyond having a few goose barnacles on it. And when this is the footage from underneath showing actually there's quite a lot on there and the algae and stuff is at such a growth that it's beyond just being a slime layer. So once the officer determined that this boat was in breach of both of those rules and was posing a risk to Fiordland, they immediately placed a notice of direction and told the skipper, the owner of the boat, to get out, to get back to Bluff, to get clean, and don't come back into Fiordland until we know that you're clean. And they were, in part of that was they had to tell us when they got back to Bluff so that we weren't chasing around south and trying to find them. They were given until the 7th of December to get back, which was 2 weeks. We always, when we're doing these marine work, try and make sure that we're being fair and reasonable, and they've actually got long enough to safely get back to a port. It's not that easy traversing around the Fiordland coast, we're aware of that, so we try and give them time. We give them places where they can stop, where it's low risk if there's a storm or something, so that they can run in, and we check the weather. 2 weeks was deemed to be reasonable. They didn't come back until the 17th, so nearly 10 days after the date that they were supposed to come back. And we had to do quite a lot of chasing to find that they'd come back. So because of that, this is just the level that the hull was deemed to be in, that it was, the experts said it had considerable fouling. But because they didn't make it back to Bluff, they failed to comply with a notice of direction, and that's a really important thing under the Biosecurity Act. Failure to comply with a legal notice from a biosecurity officer is potentially a $50,000 fine or 3 years in prison. So this was the really big one under the prosecution, that not only have you breached the 2 plans, but you haven't done what you were told to do. So all of the evidence has been obviously through the courts now. The owner of the vessel pleaded guilty to all of the counts, which is, as I said, it's the first time there's been a prosecution of this type within New Zealand. It's definitely the first time that a pathways plan has been defended, and likely to be the first time that we've had a marine prosecution, particularly by a regional council. Part of the reason why we were successful was that there was that reasonableness when it came to the notice of direction. We were being fair and reasonable. We were doing the best we could to look after the fiordland environment. And even though there hasn't been any negative consequences that we know of from that Andaria that was on that hull, we haven't had a new infestation that we can directly relate to that boat, and we can't prove that there was anything on that boat that would cause a problem. The impact and the seriousness that it could have been if that Andaria had dropped off, or if something had been brought in, was so severe that the consequences were so severe that the judge agreed with us that prosecution was appropriate, and therefore imposed a fine of $5,400. Part of the sentencing summary does say that because this is the first time, we need to be careful about what we're imposing, and that next time it could get higher and higher and higher. So not putting it on too high to start with. But making sure that it was really clear to everybody that fiordland is important, you should be looking after it, and you need to be following the rules.
All right, yeah, interesting. Eric and David.
Yeah, was this a local boat, and were they ignorant or flouting the rules?
It was a boat that is based in Bluff. The owner has come to our attention previously because of the controlled area notice in Breaksea, and we've had to talk to them about the controlled area notice, so they're aware of the rules, and they had a clean vessel pass. And they've had it for several years, so they were fully aware of the rules.
Thank you. David?
Thanks, Mr Chairman. No, I suppose the concern, Ellie, is the fact that it was the general public that actually informed you. And I know you can't be everywhere all the time, but obviously there's a bit of amongst the boat owners, so they keep an eye on what's going on, protecting what is going on, and you work quite closely with them, obviously. So,
Yeah, and the people like the Fiordland Marine Guardians and good relationships, the people out there are wanting to look after Fiordland as well, so we do get calls quite often saying, can you please check this boat, or we're worried about something.
that's good.
Gail?
Eric actually asked my question, but I've got a couple of other ones. And so this vessel is registered Waters Bluff.
I believe so, yeah.
Because I haven't seen it, but I'll check it out. Don't worry about that. And then what's its purpose? Is it a commercial
No, it's
charter?
It's recreational, so it's private recreational.
And it's a syndicate owned vessel. So was the syndicate or was the skipper actually prosecuted?
It was just the skipper, the person who had their name on the clean vessel pass. We did look about, it's really complicated with boat ownership and who you shouldn't be prosecuting or not, so we followed the legal advice that to take the one person rather than try and do all of the syndicate.
Well, from my point of view, any vessel like that shouldn't even be in Bluff Harbour. So we've got to look after Bluff as well.
Thanks, Gail. Nicole, Lloyd, and Eric.
Yes, well, it's actually really good to see a prosecution because that'll clarify a few minds, and up until now it hasn't been tested, and I think people are going to take a lot more notice. Most people are doing the right thing, but to see a prosecution that'll go around the community pretty quick, I think is very, very useful.
Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may be able to help, but you may not. Given what you said around possible prosecution, I'm probably a little bit wondering how we ended up at 5,400 with $450 each on 2 breaches. I suppose in my mind I thought the judge might have sent a clearer message and had a slightly different approach. So I'm just trying, I know that if you plead guilty, you get a third off, et cetera, but I was just wondering what the judge's first view was before he gave discounts for guilty and other activities.
I think the starting was 10 before they took the things off. They did come and talk to us first about whether what level we thought. Sorry, I'm not get the probably legal terms wrong, but they did come and ask us, or the lawyers did come back to us and say what did we think was fair for the seriousness and stuff. And I think so. The starting point was 10, and then he took the discounts off.
It does seem quite like blatantly breaking the rules, knowing the rules, and it seems for the value of the boats, and it's just a fairly sizable thing, and a bit of a slap on the wrist, really. And we're spending a lot of money on trying to clean up this stuff, so it's a bit kick in the guts for the council. But Eric.
Yeah, well, that was my first question. And if you'd broken a nod on a dairy farm when the mycoplasma thing was on, you'd have been in the $50,000 category for doing that. And so this, I don't know whether we can do anything about that, but it's a pretty soft punishment really for Fiordland, which is pristine and beautiful and we all love, compared to the way in which rules are exerted on other parts of the province, which some aren't clean, pure and wholesome. Yeah. So I'll make that point. The other one, I'm just picking up on the point that Nicole made, is that it sends a message. And I didn't see this in the paper anywhere. I wasn't aware of it till you reported it now. And if we're going to put a message out there, yeah, how do we do that better?
So there was coverage in the ODT, so the Otago Daily Times picked it up, and we did do a press release and we did try to get it out there, but it didn't get picked up maybe as much as we thought it would.
It was a good, clear article.
It was
Thank you.
No, that's good, and hopefully it does put a warning out there. We are going to prosecute. It's a start. So.
Yeah, no, I was just going to make one more comment. I think, again, these things tend to be invisible, but I'll take the opportunity to say them. The amount of work that staff have to go through in order to be ready to go to prosecution is quite a phenomenal workload, whether you're talking about biosecurity or under the RMA. There's a lot of work to get to this position. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge that is the first of its kind here, but it's no small feat to get it to a presentable state before a court. So I want to acknowledge that.
That's good. I've got Lloyd noting moving the report. Somebody want to second it? Lyndall, all in favour say aye. Against, carry. Thanks, Ellie. Got the hot seat again.
Oh, sorry, Fiona and I could request, can we switch places? So I know we've got short of time, so Fiona goes first, and
yep.
you've already heard me talking quite a bit. So.
No. Okay.
Just noting a switch, is that Fiona to catchment integration first?
So item 4, so item 3 4, swapping around. Yep. Move on to item 4. Pages.
What's that?
Page 71, guys.
Page 71.
71. When you're ready, Jim.
Here we go. Here we go.
Sun is shining, everybody be happy out there. Whenever you're ready there, Janet.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just an opportunity to celebrate the work that the catchment integration team have delivered over the past 12 months. Actually, period of extensive change on a whole lot of fronts and turbulence, but nonetheless we've been busy out there working in the community to deliver our kind of core themes of engage, educate, and power. So I'm happy to introduce a number of new team leaders. Erica Wallace joined us. She's come across actually from MPI, background in land management from Hawke's Bay. So we're thrilled to have her on board. She's going to actually kick off the presentation today. And I just thought we've got a couple of slides that we thought we'd share with you. Some of them reflect on the report that you've got in front of you, which I'll take as a read. Some of them also just look to the future, I suppose, in terms of some of the things that we're thinking about for the next 12 months. So, Erica, happy to hand over to you.
Kia ora koutou everyone. So just in light of what Fiona said, the first thing we wanted to discuss with you is obviously we've now got a full team, which is really exciting. So we've got, it's been I think 18 months since Fiona's had a full team of team leaders and land sustainability officers with her. We've now got a really skilled technical team with great communication skills and are out there making the connection with our community. Within our team, we've been really working hard. Carl's been working alongside the other team leaders and Fiona to kind of create a bit of team training. So some of the activities you can see in the top photo was a visit we did to AB Lime, having a look around their facilities there. The next photo down was a rather wet and miserable day, but still great conversation looking at some winter grazing out Drummond Way. We've had some conversations around, just in meeting rooms, around rules and regulations and just tossing ideas around and nutting a few things out. And also just recently in our last divisional meeting, we had Phoebe, one of our education facilitators who unfortunately just left us, went through the session around Atua the Gods. So having a look at some of that Matarangi Māori stuff as well. Some other work that the team have been doing too is we worked with Kim Barker on some strength training. And so that diagram you can see up there is a bit of a printout of everyone's strengths within the team. So as you can see, you've got really awesome people in that relationship building, executing, strategic thinking, and even some people in that influencing box too. So a really neat team of people working in catchment integration. Sorry, technology's failing us. Sorry, team. So in the education space, we've reported on this, I think, a little bit in the last Regional Services Committee meeting, is the Waihopo planting program. So this has been providing education opportunities for schools in the community and community groups. Currently, there's been 1,700 metres of fencing and 700 metres of riparian planting, with plenty of plans to expand this planting. One of the key things with this Waihopo planting program, as you can see in that kind of left-hand bottom corner, is all the supporters that have been part of this project, from us to the Southland Community Nursery to the schools, and the 1 Million Trees program in there as well. So it's a real collaborative project, and it's been quite awesome. So Josh has developed up this poster, which is kind of summarising the project thus far. A really big part of our work, so a lot of you will know that our team is currently split across the managed freshwater management units, so Matoda, Oriti, Akarima, Waiau. So we've been working really hard with our communities, creating strong connections with our catchment groups through supporting field days and events. The picture you see up here is an event we supported with the Akarima community environment. We did some stream walks across the 5 of the 6 catchment groups out there, and then we worked to develop these flyers that you see up on here. So this is the one for the Waiwatuku stream, and we've been working also across, and also other field days that we've been out to is bale grazing, winter grazing, field days and bits and pieces, helping support our landowners. So last Regional Service Committee we talked to you about the end of the Charlton Waimumu project for this, which is just coming into its last year now. So after that we're now looking at expanding this project with the Southland Riparian project across the rest of Southland. This year we have 10,000 plants for sale, which were procured from Te Tapuatane Nursery. There's 10,000 plants available, which we're going to split across the freshwater management units, and also offering protectors at cost. the idea of this project is to start creating some biodiversity corridors throughout Southland. This year, we are just working on some of the people that we know amongst the catchment groups for fences available for us to support them with their planting for this winter. So part of this project is the land sustainability officers work alongside the landowners to write a riparian management plan and help them determine what species would be appropriate for the area.
And we're exploring more opportunities as part of that project actually to work more closely with Te Tipu Tāne to bring in a stronger Te Māori perspective to the reasons and the benefits from riparian planting. And it's there's a real opportunity here for that project to be, I guess, a way of helping strengthen landowners' understanding of the Te Māori and obviously there's a lot of discussion around at the moment around the freshwater objective, draft freshwater objectives for Warren to Manautiwai. This is a really sort of on-ground way of helping to understand what that actually means for landowners. Thank you. So just I'll speak very quickly. I guess work that we've always been doing, which is in the farm planning space, but councillors, you'll be aware that we've got a pilot underway now working with Te Marama and with supported by MFE to test out the freshwater farm planning process across Southland. So our team will be quite involved from an operational point of view in that. And obviously what's really, will be really critical to bring Appendix N into that. I've just popped this diagram up. It's really talking about the risk-based approach to how you deliver farm plans, looking at adverse effects, bringing together catchment information, farm risks and management activity type risks, moving into the right type of actions and a prioritisation exercise, and that prioritisation exercise has to include what's important for the catchment, what's important from a regulatory point of view, and then what's important from a mana whenua perspective in terms of that particular area. And from there, a farm plan will obviously have clear actions to implement. What's missing, I think, and where we're working really closely with Te Marama is how we bring Matauranga Māori into that. And again, it's another way that we're looking to kind of strengthen how we work with our community and with mana whenua to help better understand those actions that are happening on the ground. I'm not going to speak in great deal to the, in a great amount of time to this particular slide, but I really wanted to reinforce that the work that has been done by the Regional Forum is immensely important, and particularly in the context of the draft freshwater objectives that we're looking to achieve collectively over the region. As part of that next steps, we're working really closely, obviously, with the planning and policy team, with communications, with science, with catchment operations. There's a real conversation that needs to unfold there around how we collectively implement those recommendations, how we pick them up, how we operationalise them, how we package them. And I know from my recent experiences and the kind of speaking to the public domain around these environmental challenges matters, it's really important that we think collectively, that we think in the whole about the recommendations from the Regional Forum, because actually they represent what we need to achieve as a whole collectively in terms of the freshwater goals for Southland and the values that Southlanders see for freshwater. So again, we need to kind of bring those things together in a very holistic way, internally, externally, with mana whenua and other stakeholders. Yeah, I guess this is just a tiny example, last slide of how this might look for the Waikaka stream, for example. On the left, again, there's some recommendations from the Regional Forum. On the right, there's ways in which across our group we can actually implement those ideas. So how can we take what the Regional Forum has recommended in terms of risk assessment, bringing together landscape information, looking for mitigations, thinking about the sub-catchment or the catchment that you're based in, and then taking that in terms of the work that we do internally, not just in our team. I think that's really important. It's across our organisation to actually collectively deliver that, and I'm really excited about that. It's no small feat, no small task, but I think this type of work, particularly over the next 18 months as we develop up some of the plan change information, is going to be absolutely critical to help our community in their transition. And appreciate your time. We'll happy to take any questions. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. Fiona, any questions? Lloyd? Nicole?
Two questions. One is on page 73, there's a number of intervention grazing follow-ups. The top three have all got the same statement. All have been contacted and have been sent intervention grazing plans. I hope there's more to it than that, because it's just setting a plan with no follow-up that doesn't take us anywhere, but.
So we've made contact with them and talked through the issues that we've found, and we've also, as I understand, made contact with most of the ones in the second group as well. So there is an education element, if you like, to the work that we've been doing.
So you're going to get those plans back?
So we're helping them, helping those landowners helping guide them in terms of their actions at this point in time.
Okay, so I take it the circle's complete back. The second point, I suppose, really is on page 78. Since 2014, we've done 1,000 farm plans, but this year we only did 15. Are we hitting our targets? Or what is our targets now that things have moved on in regard to two quite major plans and some intensive work around intensive winter grazing? Are we actually fulfilling our requirement, or is this now gone and we've got something new that's coming?
It's an excellent question through you, Mr. Chairman. So, look, when I talked about the regional forum recommendations and how those are going to be implemented, how we're delivering the freshwater farm plans is part of that conversation. So we have taken the pressure off in terms of delivering farm plans to the level that we were as we transition through into what's expected now. What we're able to do in terms of our role as a regulator versus an educator. We still deliver them because they are such an important tool to work with farmers to help them better understand the environmental risks on their property, the way in which they interact with the farm activities that they do. So we have maintained that, but not certainly to the level that we had in previous years. And that's because of the transition space that we're in, the introduction of the freshwater farm plans, the sort of settling in, or settling out, if you like, of Appendix N through the court process. So, very much in a transition, and councillors should look to hear sort of more about how that's going to unfold collectively, because it's, the farm plans are one part of that story, quite critical, but they are one part. And then looking to as Erica said, we've got quite a strong amount of both technical knowledge, ability to communicate, and the ability to share the wider organisational information with the community. We've really got to maximise that to be able to achieve the goals we're looking to for freshwater and biodiversity as well, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to follow up with you. As you're aware, a number of people put in plans with their consents. And I had in the back of my mind that while we've got these plans here, we've got other plans that are talked about. I'm not sure whether we're actually saying the same thing in different languages and different forms. And I think there is some urgency here to bring together, so this one plan approach, this one plan thinking covers a number of activities, right from a consenting confidence within the consenting compliance regime, but also through into meeting what I would say is government rules and regulations to actually have clarity around management and Appendix N by default, or what it looks like going forward. I think we need to try and bring those together more. Otherwise, people are sort of putting the same information in different forms, and that's the bit that people are actually getting frustrated with. And I think Groundswell sent stuff around today or yesterday that would reinforce that view. I think we need to have a good look at this from a council perspective. I like within the work that you're doing, but I think there is a need here to have a fresh look at this.
I'll let Fiona answer, but I think I'm correct in saying that the proposed freshwater farm plans is intended to capture a good number of activities and issues and risks in the one template. But maybe you can elaborate a bit further, Fiona.
Yes, I'm happy to just comment briefly, knowing that we do need to come back on a range of matters to do with freshwater farm plans. But through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm at pains to say that we must work to a stage where we have one farm plan or one template and different ways of, one template, one set of objectives, and there will be different ways. So as part of the pilot, where there is a specific piece of work to look at the transition with existing farm plans into the new framework. We are absolutely focused on ensuring that we don't have unnecessary repetition or confusion in terms of delivering the farm plan work program. And I would, I guess, reinforce that to that end, we have a really strong internal working group across divisions. So Councillor McCallum, that picks up the fact that there are plans sitting within FEMPs, if you like, sitting within discharge consents. We need to make sure we work closely with consents manager, with compliance manager to pick all of that up in terms of our transition planning for these pieces of work. But we'll come back to you with more information on that. It's really relevant.
Just a quick one. To have their own farm plans as well.
Yeah.
And this is where we need to make sure that we are.
Part of the program, so again, internally but also externally, likes of TRP farm plans.
Obviously, once maybe the government work out what a certified freshwater land means, it's going to clarify a lot of it. So hopefully that will cover everything.
So we're specifically looking to work with Fonterra, for example, around the Tiaki farm plans, and I know they're already thinking about those things. You know, how can we ensure that these can be transitioned so that they meet the obligations of both Appendix N, as that unfolds, and also of the freshwater farm planning, the Part 9A requirements of the RNA.
Okay, no, thanks. Nicole and then Gail.
Yes, well, part of mine was doing the same thing. I think we're better putting the energy, as Fiona saying, into coordinating these other plans. We haven't got the capacity to do 4,000 plans, as good as they might be, and we want all these other plans to be able to be living documents and be able to comply rather than having to have 2 or 3. But the other one is, you know, it's one of my hobby horses. It's great to see 10,000 plants. Will we have 50,000 next year?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, we're working actively actually with Te Puatane, who possibly would choose a number much larger than the number you chose. And we think that there's, you know, and again, it's a conversation we need to have also with Polly and with Ali around how we upscale this, because my suspicion, strong suspicion, is that there's a really strong interest in this type of work around the region. And the challenge we have, I suppose, the thing that I'm conscious of, and I think Councillor McCallum raised that, is establishing Indigenous vegetation. One needs to have a really strong eye on the sort of 4 to 5 year program of looking after those plants. And so, as much as I would like to upscale really quickly, at the moment we're sort of just being a little bit limited in terms of how many plants we would encourage people to take up, so that we know that they're going to keep looking after those and they'll get well established. So. Certainly don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but you know, certainly there is an appetite for a much larger planting program, but we just need to make sure that it's going to actually be sustainable.
Thanks. Okay.
I just want confidence that none of the ES leased land isn't part of this.
Oh, the winter grazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that they all have plans.
So, so through you, Mr. Chairman, Gail, just in response to your question around the lease land, part of our coordinated action internally in Environment Southland has been to work with Doug, who's looking out, and he might even want to comment on this, who looks after our lease land, and our team have also been out with Doug just to go around the properties where there are winter grazing, just to make sure that they are complying with all of both the rules, but also the good management practices around winter grazing. Absolutely.
Thanks. Peter?
This work's fantastic. You're doing it like ever since I've been in this change. We've been talking about getting out and doing stuff around the province. Fantastic. Following the work. We just need to find a way of continuing it on past 2025. And in that, I look for incentives for people doing these things. Has there been much interest in people registering new areas with the emissions trading scheme? You know, I do have some concerns with seeing what's happening in Australia. People are shutting the gate and walking away and getting paid for that. But I'm looking for some incentive to keep people interested, to keep them going. Is that something that you would advise people? They could search that out on their own.
Yeah. I'll have a quick comment and then maybe you can follow up, Fiona. I have noticed as of late we've had quite a few inquiries from people asking about the emissions trading scheme and how they can enter areas and how areas would be eligible. And it is something that the team has knowledge in. It's part of our training program amongst the team around upskilling the team to answer those sorts of questions with landowners, and obviously referring them back to more technical questions need to go through Te Rapa, the New Zealand Forest Service. But some of the basic questions around eligibility and things like that we'd be able to work with them in the right direction of that.
It's really good, because those technical questions on the ground are really important before decisions are made that can affect things, so that's really good.
Yeah, and just the only thing I'd add is just, you know, I guess if the right word is advocacy, through the central government to try and expand the eligibility. That's a little bit of a challenge, and that the minimum areas for Indigenous vegetation do make it a bit more challenging, but, you know, I think Erica's nicely answered that.
Look, good discussion. It's great to see all the good work in the community you guys are doing. And, yeah, really positive. So can I have someone note the report? Lyndall, someone second it. David, all in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right, we'll move back to item 3.
I do have some summary slides, but I also know you're short of time, so slides.
We'll keep moving if we can.
Okay. I'll take the report as read, if that's okay. But just want to add to it that unfortunately, at the time of reporting, our sea squirt from Rakiura was unidentified. Since then, it has been identified. It is a new to region species, Didenium vexillum, which is an exclusion pest in our regional pest management plan. So finding that in the region is quite disappointing, and we have set up an incident management team to try and decide what to do about it, and we have got some technical experts providing us with some really good advice. So I'm sure we'll be coming back to you in the near future saying what we're going to do on that, but it was just to let you know that update. And then a wider summary of the whole report. As everyone knows, it's been a challenging couple of years, and the fire team, I think, has managed to deliver a huge amount of work particularly the last year, in really challenging circumstances. So I just wanted to thank the team on the ground, because they've been getting out there despite COVID, despite everything else, and just getting the job done, which is fantastic. We are now into year 3 of the regional pest management plan, and I think we've come to the conclusion that it is a good plan. It is really valid. We can get there in 10 years' time. We can do what we said we were going to do in 10 years' time, but it's going to take an awful lot of work, and we need to keep pushing, and we need to keep working on it. And with all things pests, the more we look for pests, the more we find, and then the more work that we actually have to do. So it's been great this year that we've been getting out and finding things, but that just gives us more work to do. But we're feeling reasonably confident that overall we will achieve the RPMP within the timeframes. It's still a really good document. The Jobs for Nature funding has massively helped, particularly the biosecurity work and our progressive containment, so our Endaria programme, and our Darwin's Barber and Cotoneaster has been massively propped up by that programme. So we're really thankful for that money, and we do need to be looking forward as to what we're going to do when that money runs out. But with that money does come a lot of work, so again, it's great, but we've had a lot to do. In the biodiversity space, again, Jobs for Nature is really, really helping us. It's really helping us get on top of the job we need to do. Holly's already spoken through the Environmental Enhancement Fund, but we've also had a record year in terms of the surveys that we've managed to create and the management plans and fish passages. So we've had 92 ecological surveys done. We've done 70 management plans with landowners, and we've done 66 fish passages. So we're really sort of getting out there and doing what we said we were going to do. So just wanted to summarise what we've been up to.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. It's actually really good going through all this. And I think even though there's a few yellows in that, they're due to COVID, staff, and things like that. So it doesn't actually show the real, there's actually really good stuff here, and I think you should take a pat on the back of your team in that. And it's almost a bit hard on yourself saying it was out of your control to do a lot of the stuff I went through. I certainly learned a few things. I clicked on a few different species to see what they were actually. Some of the things didn't mean a lot to me, but now I know a few different things. But anyway, but great, really good, really good. Lyndall, everybody's got hands up. Lyndall
Just
first.
quickly, with regards to the next because where are we at with the special areas whose name, official title of which I can't remember, as far as potentially new ones that we discussed at the time?
Yeah, so we do have the site-specific plan for Rakiura, which is still a major piece of our work. They're looking at other sites around Southland, particularly around the Bluff-and-Murray area. We're sort of working predator-free Southland more, so our energy is going into predator-free Southland and doing a joined-up working with the community and trying to get really good in that area rather than sort of small ones in different communities. So we're just trying to be a little bit more cohesive around that.
Great, I hope that's being well received.
It's getting there.
Good, thank you.
Peter, then Eric.
Yeah,
Oh,
just want
Gales.
to comment on the predator-free works. There's a few, we pick up there, we've sort of been stumbling along this predator-free itself, I think, for quite some time, hasn't we? I was just wondering, my question, predator-free Rakiura and Bluff, is Bluff going to be considered a quarantine area, and any places like the airport, where you have people moving in and out, like, what's the thoughts on Bluff? Does that become a part of Rakiura?
So biosecurity of Rakiura is going to be an absolutely major part of that project. So if we're going to make Rakiura predator free, we need to have really good biosecurity in place. We don't currently know exactly what that's going to look like, but if we're gazing into the future and think, well, we know that the risks are going to be Bluff, we know that they're going to be the airports, we know they're going to be other ports, places where people go to Rakiura. So there is potential that biosecurity measures will be required, but we really need to work through the community and everybody as what that's going to look like and whether we need to do another pathways plan or change the rules, that sort of thing. Bluff is going to be an absolute cornerstone to Rakiura, and that we need to work out how we can keep funding that, supporting the group who are already doing amazing work down there, keep working with that community, because the more we can get that to a press-free status, the safer Rakiura is going to be. So we need to do a two-pronged attack and do both.
Thank you. Eric?
It's a follow-up to Peter, actually, about predator-free, and my concern is a little bit that we might be working in silos. We know that the government has said predator-free by 2050, I think, and what sort of discussions are we having with them, and what do we know what our role will be and what are regional councils' roles? And I see on page 70, is it, you just mentioned predator-free Southland, you're going to have a report to us by early September, so I'm wondering how that's going, and I just think we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we should all be in the same team, and I just want you to encourage me that that's actually happening.
It is absolutely happening, and I get involved in quite a lot of the national conversations as well, so I sit in the collaborative groups, particularly around the science innovation that we need for predator-free as a national level. We're involved throughout with our biomanagers throughout the rest of the country on what they're doing, and we're learning from each other, so nothing that we do, we've actually had people from other projects peer reviewing our work and vice versa, from trying to learn from each other. So definitely trying to join it up. Predator-free Southland, as I think everyone's aware, is that we have been working towards a deed for the last 12 months to try and get some funding. We still need to make some decisions on that. There's still a lot of negotiations to happen, and I think that's likely to be a topic for another meeting rather than to go into the details of it now, because it's quite a complicated space.
Okay, thank you.
Lloyd, then Gail.
My view went to personal responsibility. And I can't remember the name, but you found a new species or something down at Stewart Island, is that correct?
Yeah.
But I went through my mind how to get there, and was it through neglect, or was it that people were not doing what they should have done? So I was coming back to personal responsibility. If you want to have a future of what you have now, then you're going to have to protect it. So you need to take more responsibility and not rely on agencies to come with programs over the top and put up rules. So I'm not too sure what our education through this predator, it's not actually predator free, it's actually keeping peace out, it's actually making sure that their borders aren't breached knowingly or unknowingly, but are we being appropriate in our behaviour, I suppose. It's not the right word, but we didn't take personal responsibility.
And I think that's an area where pathways management, stopping things getting in the first place, is very, very important, and the more energy and effort and resource we can put into the education and helping people take that ownership, the less I have to do at the bottom of the cliff. So we definitely want to be in that space where we're trying to educate and encourage and do all of that. That's, yeah.
Gail?
It's just a reaction to the comment about, in terms of the Undaria Jobs for Nature funding, being COVID funding, it will eventually end. And I don't think any of yous were on council, no, you might have been, Eric. 20 years ago, we did have an Undaria program, and it kept everything, it was excellent. So what's the use of doing these things unless you've got a commitment to continue doing it, funding or no funding. Because it's blown out of control in the last 15 years as a result of doing nothing. So you need to make a commitment to continue with this program to protect our special places like Fiordland, Ruckfielder, Catlins. So it's just a comment I've got to make. It's ongoing. You need to find that funding now because it will stop.
If you ask all the funding about them, there's probably no Gale, and that never got the problem.
Yeah. It would never have got to Fiordland, it would never have got to Ruckfielder.
Thanks, Gail. Quick.
Yeah, just actually follows on beautifully from Gail's comment. Just a comment to say, actually, when the government helps us resource this stuff, it's really successful, which follows on exactly from what Gail was saying. So, a beautiful example to take back to them and say, keep funding it.
Move the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Eric. And Lyndall, second, all in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right, move on to the item 5, Catchment Operations Division update. Who's better up?
Randall should be on the line.
Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Afternoon, everyone. Take the report as read, but I do have some additions I'd like to add to the written report, if it's okay.
Randall, are you able to turn your camera on?
See you.
Can't see you, Randall. We'd like to.
You can. Unfortunately, I'm on rural internet, so you can usually have sound or video, but not often both.
Part of the province you live in.
Which would be preferable? How do you look?
It's good that you got power.
How's your interpretive dance?
Okay, we'll lead away with that today.
And I promise to be at the next meeting in person.
Okay.
Just on page 92, in regards to the annual assets inspections, this is an important piece of work for our team, and the results of these inspections will be used as the basis of our annual work program, and we'll be pushing any work that we can't afford under the current budget into the future year's work schedule that we don't address in the current financial year. So the results of these defects are going to be presented to the Catchment Liaison Committee meetings, and they'll be used as part of setting the maintenance budgets in the upcoming years as well. On page 93, in regards to the Waihopo catchment and the mediation between the Meridian and the stakeholders, we have been working on those 10-year erosion plans. We have developed another alternative budget for consideration, and then we've had that reviewed by our internal financial team. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to just bring the councillor's attention to an item that was discussed at the Te Anau Basin Catchment Liaison Committee meeting in June this year. The committee voted to contribute only 50% of the DOC annual contribution to our spraying program. So DOC are contributing 10,000 annually to the spraying program, and that would effectively reduce our weed and vegetation control program to approximately 55,000, which includes the LIN's contribution. Staff have concerns about the overall impact to the weed and vegetation control program if the situation is not resolved, either through additional funding or identifying alternative vegetation control methods. We are proposing stop grazing or cut and carry type trials in that area, which hopefully lowers the need for a large spraying program. In regards to, on page 94, the Matera catchment, I've included quite a bit of background to the structure that's known as the Titiroa Tide Gate. They've been in existence for a long period of time. It's quite a fascinating history, and I'm not sure what familiarity the existing councillors have with these. So I've included a snippet of the history that's available on these structures, and note that we're continuing with the efforts to get the structures reconsented. There have been delays in the ecology report through COVID and staffing issues, but we're getting close to having that ready to present back to council for some recommendations. On page 95, I've included a summary of the council operated quarries with Ram Hill, noting that we will be developing a quarry management plan, a site plan, including benching and access, an estimated budget for the extension and make safe work, options for funding this work, a formal draft landowner agreement including royalty, resource assessment and sales options for funding these works. So as you can see in the picture, which is not a very good quality, I apologise, but we're effectively at the end of our footprint for that land. So the only realistic option to continue operating in that space is to extend into private land. We will need similar plans for the quarry site as at Mosburn as well. And I welcome any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Randall. Just tell we just need to keep moving. So if there's any quick questions in regards to that, Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, Randall. Annual asset inspections, pretty critical sort of line of work, isn't it? Because I guess everyone's sort of on edge saying when's the next flood going to be arriving. My question is, do you feel as though you've got sufficient access to these assets, I'm saying stock banks, and sufficient access in the time of need when you have to go in and do something in haste, emergency works? Do you think that's all lined up in front of you, that can be done? I'm talking barriers.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we have good access for carrying out our inspections. So there's been no issues other than one that I'm aware of, that we're dealing with individual landowner on getting access to the stock bank. But generally speaking, I'm not sure whether council has been presented with our new asset defect program. It's relatively new, and it was developed by staff late 2019-ish, roughly. And it's still very early, but it has shown up some excellent data that we can actually make informed decisions and recommendations back to council on for future maintenance programs. But it is showing that we've got, I guess, a lack of funding issues in some areas.
But that would be quite a good presentation sometime to see that work if possible.
Yeah, thank you. It's an excellent piece of work, and it's something that's going to be real useful for us managing the assets going forward.
Yep, we'll keep going. Nickel and then Lloyd.
Yeah, it's quite concerned that DOC have not paid the amount that they normally do. I think we should be elevating that question further up the line. What to do to have a good neighbour policy, and it's the old story, if stuff gets away with a major problem. And so just because somebody at that level say we haven't got any money, I don't think it's acceptable. We need to take that a bit further.
We can be assured that if it's not already happened, it will.
Yeah. Lloyd?
That was my question.
Yeah, no. I just mentioned that's what I was whispering fully before. So, no, that's all good if we're happy with that. That's item 5, yes. Can I leave that report, Lloyd? And someone second it? Nickel, all in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Right. Item 6. Sorry, if you realise, people, that 3 o'clock we've got the MPI coming in, so that's why there's a wee bit of push on. Item 6.
Thank you, David.
Dave and Paul. Cheers. Randall again.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take the report as read, and I have nothing to add to it. And the two guys that know the most about it look like they're at the back of the room.
No, thanks, Randall. It's pretty straightforward of all the work you've been doing. There's plenty of work you've been done, so that's
If anybody's got individual questions, they could go to staff.
Yep, that'd be good. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Eric. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right.
The only thing it does raise is the previous meeting we talked about rock being elevated in this meeting. We're not going to get a chance to talk about it, but we need to keep that line of thinking going through from the last meeting, and your comments and knowledge around quarries. We need to keep that going regardless of the meeting time.
Certainly, we certainly will.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Okay, moving on to number 10. We don't have Doc. Phil's put an apology in, nobody else from Doc here, so we won't get that verbal update. We're always keen to have them there.
He's had knee surgery.
Oh, has he? Oh, well, we'll wish him all a speedy recovery.
Indeed.
Be running around
Do we have an alternate for Doc? It's not the first time that
We did have someone, I can't remember. Kevin that came. So it'd be always good to have someone, I mean, it's good to get Phil back here too.
We knew that contact. I think if they're going to be part of the committee, they really need to participate, otherwise.
Especially if we have questions for them.
Yeah, no, it's very informative of what's going on.
We just want to build relationships, not.
Yeah. No, well, Paul,
Yes.
Julie, note
I
that.
note that.
Any extraordinary urgent business? None that I know of. We'll move into public excluded. Reasons for that.
So moving into public excluded to enable any local authority holding the information to carry out without prejudice or disadvantage commercial activities, as well as to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased natural persons.
Someone move? Lyndall? Thank you. Nick will see. No one in favour say aye.
Aye.
Yes.